years ago. I also have a book, a yearbook, and I don't know if it's been passed around. If it hasn't been passed around, Bill did a yearbook. Bill graduated a year behind me. I've known Bill for at least 60 years. I think way back in the Little League. Did you play for VFW? Yeah? See that? Still got it, Bill.
Very good.
Anyways, a long, long time, and this was this yearbook, he painted the cover of it. All the senior class. I mean, and it's remarkable, and if you look at the seniors in their picture, you can pick out who all of them are. I just thought it was really, really neat. I've known Bill for a long time, and he's absolutely talented, good athlete when he was young in school, and has moved towards the art, the things that he loved, and I around Bill from time to time, and this honor that he has today to me is rates right up there with the big honors, biggest honors of anybody ever coming out of HIX. So at this time, I'll introduce Bill Hinsch, local boy, and let Bill tell you about his education, what he's done, and do the program. So please give a round of applause for Bill.
I may come down there in a little bit because I'm going to play a video that might help explain some recent luck I've had in the past year. I had something happen to me that is kind of like the capper of my career. I've had a real good career as an artist, as a professional artist. I was in these young folks' place, 62 years ago, and I think we had art teachers in Hicksville who were pretty darn good. I remember one guy, remember Mr. Brzezinski, you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was I think he was one of the art teachers, and a few other ones. So I'm glad you guys came today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you a little bit through for those that may not know me as well as Bruce does and Lenny, I'll take you a little bit through my career, which leads up to this present moment, and then I'll explain about what happened this past year. Maybe I'll show the video first, if I can get this thing to work. This does half my job for me. They're making a documentary about the making of a painting, so this is a little bit from it. And I hope the sound will be okay.
I might add that Bill was, and I don't know if he's going to tell you this or not, he was the illustrator, the artist for the Toledo Blade for how many years, Bill?
15 years, 18 altogether. Yeah.
So whenever you picked up the Toledo Blade, huh?
Editorial cartoonist.
Editorial cartoonist. He's had some interesting career moves.
Okay. This thing may take a little bit. I'll continue on while that's warmed up. So, is it okay if I stand out here? Can you hear me all right? Sure. Okay, great. So, about just a little over a year ago, I got a call from a good friend of mine. He's a CFO of a school down in southern Ohio. And I worked with him for quite a few years, and he called me up. My family calls me Billy, and this guy is familiar enough with me, he calls me Billy as well. So he calls me up and said, Billy, did you know that the state of Ohio would put out an RFP, request for proposal, for the Ohio astronauts? I go, oh, I didn't know that. He had a little ad there. So I took a look at it, and it looked to me like something that was in my wheelhouse, but I didn't think I could win it. So I just kind of shelved it for a couple of weeks. I got to thinking about how, nobody's really as qualified as I am to do this painting, because I've done a lot of aviation work for the Air Force. I've got about 15 paintings in the Pentagon, 2 paintings down at the Air Force Museum. So I thought, I might have a fair shot at this. I don't think I'm as good as some of the other artists probably. So I put my hat in the ring, and I was one of 3 selected at the end. A real great artist from Toledo by the name of Leslie Adams was one of them. So there's 2 people from Toledo, me and Leslie, and then a guy from Dayton. Now Dayton is where the Wright brothers bred, so he was at the heart of it all there. And so anyway, we had to present work and a proposal. So I did my proposal, I did my sample. I'll show you what the first thing looked like. This is the actual painting that I presented. That's oil paint on a board. You see it's like birch board there. And so when you see the final, it's pretty close to this. There's a couple changes though that the people at the Statehouse want me to do. They showed this to the families of these astronauts, and I'm going to ask in a few minutes, especially these young people, if they know who these astronauts are. But I'm not going to mention my name. This guy right down here, he's a real famous astronaut, and he had his helmet on. And the family of this guy, they said, well, everybody else doesn't have their helmet on, why does our family member have this helmet on? I thought, no particular reason, and they're spacemen, so I thought you gotta have one person with a space helmet. So I put that on there. They said, well, we think you ought to change that. Okay. Then the other thing that they didn't like is the Resnick family. Oh, I gave it away. This is the Challenger accident, which happened in 1986. It was a big event in the United States. Ronald Reagan, if you remember, he had a famous speech after that happened. And the family, it's like the sorest day in their life. It just touches a nerve. And so the people at the Columbus Statehouse thought that we should change that. So I changed that. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. So I'll show you then the final painting. I had to do a preliminary version of the painting. And here's the preliminary that I did. And now I want to do a little test. I've done this a number of times with age groups, right? Different people. Jake, of the Rotarians, are you the youngest here? All right. Do you know who they are?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, like if I point at this guy, you know who he is?
Armstrong?
Okay. Who's this one?
Or wait. That's Armstrong. First guy is Glenn.
Okay.
Couldn't tell you who the next two are.
Right here? Right here? Okay.
Don't know.
Would you guys know those at all? Okay, pretty much skews out. What I found is under 40 almost never know who these people are. And over 40, the closer you get to my age, people know who they are just by sight. And one of the things I think that this is done for the state of Ohio and now hangs as of 2 weeks ago in the Rotunda in the Capitol. And this is an homage to the Ohio astronauts, which are the best of the best. They're the cream of all astronauts. What the heck is going on here? I thought I turned this off.
It's the president.
Being requested by the White House.
We can't hear
What
this
you
one.
do, a caricature of
John
Bill
Glenn.
Hinsch.
I can hear it in my ear. Must have the wrong button here. Okay. So, anyway, there's a proud legacy in Ohio of aviation and flight because of the Wright brothers. And Ohio has been fortunate to have these people be at the forefront of the space exploration. There's 3 other states that have more astronauts than Ohio. Ohio has 31, California 46, I think, New York has more than us, and Texas. But all of them would love to have these people because they're the best of all time and the most notable. 2 movies have been made about this guy right here. This is Jim Lovell. He's still alive. The guy down in the lower right corner is the most famous mission controller. His name is Gene Kranz. He was from Toledo. He's still alive. And unfortunately, Judy lost her life this Judy Resnick. She lost her life in the Challenger accident. And then Armstrong, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago he died. Glenn, by the way, Glenn went up in the space shuttle. We had changed the Challenger to the Discovery space shuttle. And Glenn had also been on the Discovery, and Judy's first flight was on the Discovery. So one fortunate thing of changing the painting was that now we have this kind of connection between the start, John Glenn, with this is Friendship 7 was the name of this craft. Mercury 6 was the actual rocket. So there's kind of a connection, John Glenn, but Back to the Future, I don't know, it's like you got this thing, I call it a parabola, which is a aviation term, and so it just kind of connects it all. The whole story of NASA is in this picture. I was talking with Gene Kranz. We had this gala about 2 weeks ago. Ed was there, Ed Delagrange, and I was talking to Gene Kranz, and he's the one that told me. He looked at this. He says, the whole history of NASA is in that picture. I go, I didn't quite realize that, but I thought that was a nice thing for him to say, and it really is. If you consider the different stories that sit underneath this, every one of these people had a fantastic career, starting with military, possibly. John Glenn was in three wars, in the Korean War, World War II, he started, and then he was in the Chinese-Sino War, I think they call him. So he was a real warrior and just a great man too. I got to meet him and Armstrong at the Dayton Museum when I did a painting with a friend of mine by the name of Harley Kopic. Harley's one of the top 3 aviation artists of all time. And he and I collaborated on a picture. I painted the people and he painted the craft, and it was the 100th year of flight, and it included all the aviators, the famous aviators from Ohio. And Glenn and Armstrong were at the presentation of this painting. And so I got to meet them. John Glenn signed a couple prints for us. Neil Armstrong, interestingly, he didn't sign any prints. I think he was so sick of people wanting to put his name on things that he just didn't want to do it. So anyway, this painting now this was done, I think, in April of last year, and then I started painting the big one. Now this painting is huge. It's, what do you think, Ed? It's a foot above this?
No, well, it's.
Is that an 8 foot?
This is 10 foot.
Well, this is
It'd
10
be
foot.
right at the bulkhead, 9
Okay.
foot tall.
And then, I don't know, spans quite far. There's a photograph that you can find on the web of
It'd be
these.
6 of these tiled wide, be 12 foot wide.
Yeah.
You want me to bring the other picture up?
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna play this in just a minute and they'll see some of the scale of it. Anyway, that's a huge painting. You know, most of the paintings I've done might be like this. The one that we did down at the Air Force Museum was maybe 8 foot. But if you get out here to, 12 feet and 9 feet, that is a mammoth painting. It took me 7 months to do it. I probably worked 7 days a week. I asked Lenny if he's retired, and he says, well, not really. He still keeps his hand in there, but I think both of these guys still work, pretty long weeks, and it's just the fate of an entrepreneur, I think, that you have to work like that. But I'm at the age of 70, almost 70, I'm still working about 7 days a week and half for years. So there's been a lifelong commitment for me to art. Kind of lost my place in what I was going to say.
How big it was and how long it
Yeah.
took to paint it.
Right. So 7 months to paint it. And one of the people that helped me with that, I had a number of people help me. And Ed Delagrange maybe was the most important person other than me on this job. I'll just tell you 2 quick stories and then I'll play the video. So I got Ed involved because at this age, getting up on scaffolding, like normal scaffolding, is difficult. My legs are not so great. I had a hip operation about March last year, and I was about to start this thing right around that time. So I knew that I couldn't get up on scaffolds, ladders, forget about it. I would probably topple off of those things. So I asked Ed if he had a solution for that. He came up with a really great concept of a tiered scaffold. So this is a 3-step, scaffold. The upper end was maybe 4 feet, you think?
Yeah,
Ed?
4 foot,
4 foot, and then
2 foot,
2
and
foot,
7 inches.
and then 7 inches. And this allowed me then, like Lego blocks, to move those around. And so if I was working on the right side of the painting and up high, I'd put the highest part of the scaffold here, and then I would get up on that. I could climb up that, put a chair up there, my little taboret with my palette on it. I paint in oils, so I could do everything very comfortably, and I didn't have to stand all the time. It was a big worry of mine when I agreed to do this painting. So Ed was real instrumental in that. And the other thing is probably too much inside baseball, but he created something we called the barn doors. And so it's literally the barn door things that slide, above your barn.
Your track.
Yeah, tracks. So above the painting, he built a track, and then we had these rollers attached to 2 planks, one here, those slid like this, and then another piece of board between it with pegs, and then I could, position those pegs anywhere I wanted to, and if I had detail to do, I could rest my hand on that and, paint very fine work. So Ed was the guy that did that. I'm going to play the video now, and I'll tell you a couple other quick stories. I might have the same problem again. All right, here we go. Unfortunately, my speakers don't work. I think the speakers in the computer might be loud enough to everybody to hear it. I can't do any better than this, so. I'm Bill Hinsch, here to share my story. It's a story painted on a huge canvas, literally. It celebrates true heroes who first reached the moon, and as a result, mankind is poised to go to Mars. It took me nearly 8 months to just paint it, and with the preliminary work, an entire year from start to finish. It's become my own personal moonshot. I've boiled it down to the men, the machines, the missions, and the dangers. There's John Glenn, the first American to orbit Earth. Neil Armstrong, who flew to the moon and left his footprints on it. Jim Lovell, whose courage turned Apollo 13's successful failure into a legendary comeback story that revealed NASA's finest hour. Judy Resnick, one of the first women astronauts and a pioneer in space robotics. And finally, that famous mission controller, Gene Kranz, who came from my hometown of Toledo. These remarkable people shared something special with all of us. They were born in Ohio, just like me, and maybe you too. As a young boy from Ohio, I grew up drawing pictures. I've always been inspired by men and women who put it all on the line, never placing themselves first, but operating as a team, side by side with an army of other people back on Earth. Back then, I captured them in crayons. Now I capture them in oil paint on canvas. My painting and the stories of these astronauts are reminders that no dream is too big if you just apply yourselves and follow it. This is more than a project to us. It's a celebration of Ohio's heroes among the stars. The painting has come to an end now, though, with its hanging in the Capitol Rotunda. But the journey continues with a book we've created about the other 26 astronauts and a documentary about Ohio's connection to the space race and the making of my work of art, The Base Tribute. We will dive deeper into the stories of the top 5, their missions, the dangers they faced along the way, and their humble roots here in our state. To bring this vision to life, we need your support. Your contribution is vital in helping us complete this endeavor. For a small donation, we have a number of unique items like prints of the painting, the book, postcards, and a ticket to one of the preview screenings around Ohio sometime this coming summer of 2024. For a larger donation, we'll come to a location of your choice, screen the film, and facilitate a discussion with your guests about these remarkable people and the next steps in space exploration, Mars. Join us in this exciting venture and be part of a story that pays tribute to the extraordinary men and women of Ohio, the cradle of astronauts and the birthplace of the space age. What do you think? You like it? Now, you know, there's a lot of things that I take out of Hicksville, but one, I was really fortunate in a couple people. Across the street here is the Johnson Memorial Library. Do you remember Goldie Belknap?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got a video, very important person in my life. I got a video, believe it or not, there was a video captured of me and her back in 1960. Let me just play this real quick. There's no music or anything. So there's the library. I lived 5 doors down, you know, from there, next to where Merle Pepple lived. And so I would come down to the library most days, and Goldie, she was real instrumental in showing me books on art, introducing me to some of the great illustrators like Norman Rockwell and Howard Chandler Christie, and there I am on the table there. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
She's not even telling you to be quiet either.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's on the edge of town, I think that was Kenny Hinch's place there.
That was Headley's built it.
Well, that was
Bill
Headley's.
Headley built it,
Yeah.
and then he leased it to Kenny Hinch later on.
Okay, that's what it was. Anyway, I've always liked that little clip. This film was called Hicksville 1960, and fortunately, my brother and sister were also in that movie, so it's kind of a treasure for our household.
I got one of those too.
Yeah, it's great. So anyway, Goldie was really important to me, and I had a teacher, Mrs. Miller. Probably nobody here remembers her. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know what her first name was. But when I was about well, it would be first grade. So what? I'm seven years old, and Mrs. Miller. I think because I was drawing all the time instead of doing what I probably talking and drawing all the time. So punishment, or maybe the best thing that ever happened to me. Mrs. Miller, while the other kids were at recess, she set me up at the blackboard. They had, in those days, at the old school down on Arthur Street, they had these nice big blackboards, and she let me do the Warner Brothers cartoons, which I was interested in at that time of my life. So I did like a mural. This would have been over 2 weeks, maybe, every day at recess. So that set my work ethic, in place, but also kind of honored me, for my art talent. A teacher. I've had a few other teachers that were real instrumental that way. I don't know if you guys have had good teachers in your lives, but it's an important thing. So anyway, fast forward today. After this painting was done, they had decided to have a big gala at the Statehouse, where the painting now is up on the wall, for many of the dignitaries from Ohio and the people that are still alive from the space age, the Ohio astronauts. There were 3 Ohio astronauts, not any of these here, but Gene Kranz was there. He's a big hero of mine, the guy down in the lower left corner, and he's the legendary mission controller. He's now over 90 years old. He came to this gala and he spoke. He spoke for what, 40 minutes? Ed was there. 40 minutes, and he had so many stories about the other astronauts that he told, because he was involved with all of them. He was the mission controller on most of these missions. So, real interesting guy. I got to talk to him. Big thrill for me. And there were other people there. Judy Resnick, her brother was there, Charles Resnick. And of course, he doesn't like to talk too much about her death and that, but he has a foundation now that's called the Challenger Foundation, and they do a lot of different things. So Chuck Resnick, real good guy, and he told me a few stories about Judy. Also, this is kind of a cool story. It's not on this painting, but on the final painting, right down here is a red star. It's the only red star on the canvas. The man, one of the people that donated $50,000 to this cost $150,000 for me to do this painting. So nice payday for me. I spent a lot of it on expenses, but in any event, one of the guys that funded this, his name is Paul Tomarius. He's a Greek guy in Akron. And Paul has this huge hanger. You ever seen those sports hangers with, that are, it's like a dome? You ever seen those? He's got one of those, his own personal dome, and he refurbished Armstrong's Atlas V rocket. So he rebuilt this rocket. It was in real disrepair. I mean, he said that you could kick a hole in the side of the rocket because the metal was all, rusted out. So they took that in this big hangar. This is probably 10 years ago. They refurbished that, and now it's in the Air and Space Museum. Right now he's working on another rocket that's more similar to what John Glenn flew, which is right down here. And that's in a hangar over there in Akron right now. And I think they're almost going to deliver it to the Dayton Museum maybe in the next month. So my son, who's doing the documentary, we want to get over there and film him and talk to him and interview him about these projects that he's done. But anyway, he came to my studio to see the painting, him and his wife, Jeannie. Real nice couple. He's real low-key. Jeannie's very talkative and an interesting person. So I wanted to do something special for them because they had put so much money into this. So I had all of them put stars, on the painting, different places. And then I had Jeannie do the one red star right there. And so if you ever look at the painting, if you get a close-up, I've got prints over there. You can see that one red star, the only one there. So that's Jeannie's star. So anyway, that's a little story there. I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions, we got 5 minutes here.
We gotta tell them Tom Hanks was there.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say today. Yeah, Jim Lovell, I guess he's starting to get a little dementia, and he's pretty much stays at home all the time. His daughter was there, and she told me that she lives about 2 miles from him, still goes over every day. So they had him do a little video, maybe 5 minutes, and they played that during this gala. And then the other video was Tom Hanks. Hanks, because he played Jim Lovell in the movie Apollo 13, they still, pretty close. They got to know each other quite a bit then. We thought maybe Hanks was going to come to the gala in Columbus, but when Lovell decided not to, then Hanks backed out. He was about 2 days away from his viewing of Masters of the Air, which is on Apple TV right now. So he declined to come, but he filmed a real nice tribute to Jim and to the Ohio astronauts. and Senate, so that it could be played. Anyway, this is a proud heritage for Ohio and Ohioans. It's a special thing. I mean, no other state has it. It's unique. And the gala that I was at, never be anything like that again. In fact, my painting will be the last painting in the Rotunda. On the other end, my painting is right across from the Wright brothers painting, which was done 60 years ago.
66.
66. And then before that, there was a guy by the name of Howard Chandler Christie, who was, when Goldie Belknap showed me, illustrators and that where I could see their work, he was one of them that, that I was intrigued with. And his two paintings are at the other end of the Rotunda, opposite from where I'm at, and the Wright brothers painting. And it's really satisfying to me. It kind of closes the loop on my life to have my work hanging with one of my heroes on the other end. And if you look at those two paintings, they're great. One of them is really big. There's two real big paintings in the Capitol, and his is one of them. I think they might be equal size. There's one that's like in the round part of the Capitol, done by a guy by the name of Powell, William Powell, same name as the actor. And that was painted in 1864. And then there's another huge one. This Howard Chandler Christie painted that painting. I went down to visit his heirs have kept his barn studio alive over these years. They still live on the property in the place where Howard Chandler Christie lived. They invited me down. I went down there. I got to see where he worked. So it was a special thrill for me. But to have my work cheek by jowl with that is to me, that's real special. Maybe to nobody else. Any questions anybody have?
I got a question for you, Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't hardly draw a stick figure myself, but
Okay, I can't either.
you don't need to. When you go from a painting like this, and maybe even do it on smaller paintings, but do you have to like make any marks on there as you start to
Oh yeah.
set your scale and stuff?
Letty, that's a real key question, because maybe one of the hardest things to do is to take, there's a lot of work in this, right?
Oh, yeah.
But now you got to transpose this up on the large canvas.
Right.
So most artists use a grid system.
Okay.
All right, so I used a grid, but I also used a projector so that I could, just like this here, so that I can just kind of draw it up on there, but also a grid so you can kind of keep track. So I take a printout of this, put a grid, 12 by 12 maybe, and then scale that up to the big canvas, and then just kind of follow. With observation, you can tell where those lines are supposed to be, so you rough it out that way. It's a real good question, because the hardest thing for me to do on this painting was work from, to transition from this scale up to that larger scale, because when you're working, you're this close to it working on it, and you kind of lose the overall. When you're painting this size, you can see everything at once, in your view. So your spatial relationship to that work is all inclusive. But on the big painting, you can only see a little bit in front of you. So do I have the nose too big? I mean, am I getting those ears right? I mean, it's all of that. So because I've never done one this big before, that was a challenge for me. Good, really good question. You hit on maybe the toughest part. Yeah.
Two questions real quick. Has this opened the doors to some other projects forthcoming? Or?
Well, that's interesting. So I've had about 4 phases to my career. So I had my early career, I did things for Merle Pepple, he kind of helped me. I did things in his job shop. And then that led to working at Aero Corporation, drawing parts. So you have pumps and air gun things. And so I would draw, the parts going out. You have, bolts and nuts and everything. So draw those out. That was my first job over in Bryan. But then 7 months later, I knew a guy at the Blade, and he got me in there, an art director at the Blade. He liked my work. Within 4 years, I was doing the most important work in the department. And then about a year later, I went into the editorial side, and then I was the art director of the Blade for, the next 15 years after, 18 years altogether. So that's like part of my middle career. And then I left the Blade and started a company with another guy by the name of Randy Root, and that company's called Root Learning. It's still in existence today. Really successful company, and it took me to every part of the world. I worked in Europe. I've been down to New Zealand about 15 times doing work down there, all over Europe and all over the United States with most of the big companies at one time or another. So that was my 2/3 of the way through my career. When I started my own company, then I continued to do learning products, and I still do learning products today. But my plan has always been eventually to come back to painting as the key thing. I've done painting all along, you know, through the years, but it's more an avocation than a vocation. So this next phase for me, I think, is moving into more of these kind of things. And what I got my eye on is I want to get a hold of Walter Isaacson, who wrote the book on Elon Musk. And Musk is absolutely crazy about space. I mean, of all the things that he's done, that's the thing that's his love, is SpaceX. So I want to get a hold of him, and I got an idea that I want to pitch to Musk that would be along the lines of an interactive mural. And I don't know if I'll be successful with it. It might be the next 10 years of my career, and that'll end it, I think, after that, because I won't have the energy to do it anymore. So that's...
Let's get on Twitter.
What's that?
So let's get on Twitter, make it viral.
Yeah.
Kids.
Anyway, thanks, and this is the first time I've delivered something like this, so if I'm a little hesitant and didn't explain it very cogently, I apologize. I'm starting, you know, I'm getting my shtick down, so.
So how many different ideas did you have till you came up with that one?
Well, I probably had this one first. They told me at the start, I asked them, I said, now how many ideas can I put in? And they had to think, nobody had thought of that question, and they said, well, one. I said, oh, okay, so I can only do one idea. Yeah. So what I did is I gave the system. I actually did 3 ideas, but I did it where I positioned this one as my idea, but then I said, but I've also done this preliminary work leading up to this, so then I showed my other 2 ideas, because if they like that better, they, you know, we switch it. So you know, I entered 3 ideas. I didn't bring those sketches with me today, but I've got them, you know, at home. A little different variation on this. So, little Hicksville savage there. You know, my dad was a real, you know, he was a little funny at the edge sometimes, and so I learned a little bit of.
So do they want portraits as part of the painting, or did it?
It is specified. It could be anything from doing all 31 astronauts, which would be almost impossible, to, you know, breaking it down maybe to the most important. So I determined that this was the most important. The other artists that put in, one other one had crayons. And I think that was maybe a masterstroke on my part, because they totally agreed that it should be more than just the astronauts, because that guy's stature is so great. So I included crayons in the class.
Bill,
Thanks.
Over there.
I got one more question, Bill.
Yes, sir.
You got some young artists in the room today
Yeah.
from the school. What advice, or what piece of advice would you give these young people starting a career, maybe if that's where they want to move forward with?
Things are completely different today than in my day. I think it was a lot easier for me to break into art. I came through the illustration route, so in other words, I was not a fine artist. This might be considered fine art, but I approached it as an illustrator would do it. It's difficult these days, I think, to break into illustration. I think I would follow what you want to do. You know what? Out of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so out of your 6, it's likely that only maybe 1 continues on in art. That's just the way it is, right? I would just say, if you really love art, just do it, and then the opportunities will come to you. The unique thing about the human mind is when you start to focus on something, and you get, you know, super focused on it, and you get your vision really tight, then the opportunities start to line up behind you. And I think, you know, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here that'll tell you the same thing. You just got to get focused on what you want to do, let the opportunities line up behind you, and then things start to happen. And people come out of the woodwork to support, you know, what you're doing. So the universe wants success for you. You just got to seize it, I think. That would be my advice.
Do you have any other questions?
Thanks.
Bill's parents, when he grew up, his mother was active in the Uber Theater, acting. In fact, as his father, Bill, did a lot. Bill was a big guy. So you have some bib overalls too.
I did.
Kinda like your dad.
Looks like my dad.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. You know, I was going to put those on today. I thought, well.
If you knew his dad, he was a very humorous, colorful character. And so Bill got a little bit of that too.
And his size.
Yeah, well, not quite, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your mom, Ella, was too, didn't she?
She was in.
I remember her one time, I think, playing Carol Channing.
Yeah, Carol Channing.
Yes.
She had a good, Yeah, I think invitation for.
And she was active in the building players and stuff, but thank you guys for coming today too.
Thank you. Glad you showed up.
Mike, how about him and that, and the kids take a picture?
Yeah, we're gonna take care of it. We're right now. We will, close the meeting. Thank you for all being here, the students, Bill, and thank you, Bruce, for bringing the program. Ed, thank you for being here, and we will dismiss with the pledge of allegiance.